Good afternoon, everyone. Tanya, please sit down in front. Okay, it's just like church. Nobody wants to sit in the front row. We got plenty of seats up front for those of you who are standing. If you don't want to come sit, Pam, please have a seat. You know, we got two more seats up, one more seat up front. We're going fast. There you go. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you all very much for coming out here this afternoon. And especially want to thank Mayor Jensen and Senator Quick for being here as well. Senator Quick, I know you drove in from Lincoln or headed back, so thank you for being here for this. I appreciate it. And I appreciate all of you taking the time to come out this afternoon and talk about, again, the important things that we have here in Nebraska to be able to grow our state. Jay, how you doing? Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Nebraska grit. Nebraska grit is characteristic of our people. It's what has allowed our ancestors to come to our great state, which then was known as the Great American Desert, and turn it into the most productive farmland in the world. Nebraska grit is what allowed our heroes to overcome obstacles, to be able to accomplish their goals. People like George Norris put 5,000 miles on his car, wearing out 2 sets of tires, sent out 192,000 flyers at his own expense to be able to promote for our Unicamp. Another Nebraska hero who demonstrated Nebraska grit was Don Stratton. He was on the USS Arizona during Pearl Harbor, and in fact was nearly killed when a Japanese bomb caused flames to engulf the entire ship. He managed to escape, and after months and months of surgeries and rehabilitation, actually re-enlisted in the Navy to finish out World War II. And it's with that same spirit and determination that we've got to tackle the challenges that we've got ahead of us. We know, for example, the farm income has gone from about $7.5 billion in 2012 and 2013 down to $4.5 billion in 2015, a 39% decrease. 2016 looks like it'll probably be closer to $4 billion. Because of that, our revenues have come in below forecast. And like every other Nebraska family, when we see our income go down, we have to tighten our belts. Now, last week, I made a proposal to the legislature to be able to adjust our budget, making recommendations and reductions, to bring us back in balance in our budget for this fiscal year, which ends June 30th. And I'm encouraging the legislature to take that up and make it a priority, because we have to get our budget back in balance. And it's important that in that budget recommendation, we did not raise taxes. Now, in this new biennium, we're going to have to continue to control expenses. And today in my State of the State, I rolled out my new budget. Now, if the legislature makes the reductions that I recommended, over the course of the next 2 years, from that base, we will grow an average of 1.7% a year for the next 2 years. We will prioritize key funding initiatives, like education. So, for example, I'm proposing that we grow the state aid formula for K-12 education by 2.7%. In fact, that's growing it by nearly 60% more than the state budget is growing. I'm also recommending we continue to fund corrections and continue the reforms there to protect the public safety. We will be able to continue to deliver essential services, fund our priorities, balance the budget, and all do it without raising taxes. And that's important. Thank you. Because that is important. Because one of the things as I travel the state, last year I did 30 town halls, is people tell me they are taxed too much. We need to find ways to be able to return dollars to our taxpayers. And so as part of my proposal, we're doing that as well. Working with Senator Lydia Brosh, who's chair of the Agricultural Committee, we are proposing a structural change to how we value ag land. As I've traveled the state, our farmers and ranchers have told me about how property tax increases have really put a big squeeze on their operations. You know, as cattle and commodity prices come down, it's difficult to make their ends meet. In fact, one of my ag advisory team just gave me the P&L for some of his land, and he's losing money. So we have to find ways to think about what we do in property taxes, and we have the opportunity right now to make fair, lasting, and structural changes to how we value agri. So I'm proposing with the Agricultural Valuation Fairness Act that we change the way we value property taxes for agri. From the market-based system we have today to an income potential system that will be more fair and frankly more standard across states. States like South Dakota, North Dakota, Iowa, Kansas, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, Ohio, they all use this income potential base to value agri. It's more fair and really correlates property taxes with that income potential for our farmers and ranchers. Another idea that we are proposing, this time working with Senator Jim Smith, who's chair of the Revenue Committee, is to be able to bring down our income taxes. What we're proposing is going to do it, though, the Nebraska way, by controlling spending first. With our budget that we have in place right now, or what we're proposing, we can reduce the expenses to get our budget back in balance. And then by giving attention to expense control, we can start bringing down that top income tax rate from 6.84% down a little each year, in fact about 0.1% each year over about 7 years to get it under 6%. Now we will only do that if our revenue is growing by at least 3.5% or more. So again, whereas other states have tried to cut their income tax rates and not cut spending, we're going to cut the spending first and then cut income tax rates. That's the Nebraska way. We do it in a responsible budgeting way and a responsible tax relief way. So as long as our revenues are growing, we will be able to take that tax rate down about 0.1% a year over the course of 7 years, and if our revenues don't reach that goal, we won't bring the tax rates down. It's that simple. Do you know it has been 20 years since Nebraska has cut that income tax rate? Our hardworking families deserve better of their elected officials than to treat cutting that income tax rate as a once-in-a-generation event. We have the opportunity now, by exercising that fiscal restraint, to be able to deliver that tax relief in a responsible way, and that's what Senator Smith and I are proposing. We have other initiatives as well to grow Nebraska. We're looking to ways to make government more effective, more efficient, and more customer-focused. For example, working with Senator John Morante, we are looking to be able to take our department, our Division of Veterans Homes, and move it into our Department of Veterans Affairs. Streamlining our organization so that veterans don't have to go to 2 organizations to get help. We'll be able to put that all in one organization, one agency, one team that is streamlined to deliver those services to our veterans, so we can do a better job of servicing. We're also looking to merge our Department of Aeronautics and our Department of Roads into a Department of Transportation, which will allow us to leverage both organizations to put more money into roads and runways without sacrificing jobs. We're also looking to cut regulatory red tape. And the way we're going to do that is through our occupational licenses. About 25% of Nebraskans are required to have an occupational license. And in some areas, they're just simply unnecessary or more onerous than what other states require. So for example, we require licenses for potato shippers. Well, that's probably not necessary, so we can get rid of that. But car salespeople also require a license. And frankly, the state isn't providing any education. There's no health or safety things here. This is frankly just a tax that somebody has to pay to sell cars. So we're going to do away with that one as well. In other areas, like say a massage therapist, we actually have more onerous requirements than other states. In fact, in the press conference we had this week, we had a woman come and say she came to Nebraska to start her business and then ended up going back across the river to Iowa. So we don't want to drive good people away. We want to make sure that people who are changing careers and professions or being upwardly mobile have that opportunity to be able to get into those careers more quickly. So what we're doing is bringing our requirements down to what other states do. So for example, if you're a cosmetologist, we're going to bring the requirement down to 1,500 hours instead of the 2,100 hours we have today. Or if you want to be somebody who's an instructor, we can do that rather than 950 hours, bring it down to 750 hours or 350 hours if you get 2 years experience. Again, these are all in line with what other states do. By cutting that regulatory red tape, we will allow people to get to work faster in their chosen careers. This will actually be an effort across 8 different committees with 8 different senators helping us on 20 different careers to help us cut that regulatory red tape. So we've got a lot of opportunity here to really, again, do a better job providing our services to the people of Nebraska and cutting back those expenses. And that's the way we're going to manage our budget and continue to manage the agencies to be able to do a better job of delivering our services. So we've got a lot of opportunity ahead of us. We've got a lot of work left to do. But I'm looking forward to working with the legislature to get our budget back in balance without raising taxes, to continue to control spending, to be able to deliver tax relief in a responsible way, and continue to make government more effective, more efficient, more customer focused for all the people of Nebraska who are our customers. I'm excited about the opportunities we have in front of us. We live in the best place in the world, and the opportunities are endless. We just have to do what Nebraskans have always done, show that true Nebraska grit, to tackle our problems, work together, and continue to grow our state. Thank you all very much for coming out here this afternoon. By being here today, you all demonstrate that very best spirit of Nebraska, of how we're involved in our communities, in our schools, and our churches, and participate in our great legislative process. So thank you for being here today. God bless you all, and God bless the great state of Nebraska. With that, we'll go ahead and open it up to questions and answers. Yes, Steve.
Governor, why not support a broadening of the sales tax and provide dollar-for-dollar property tax relief through that mechanism?
Well, as Ronald Reagan said, it is simple fairness that government should not raise taxes on families that are struggling to pay their bills. We're not going to raise taxes on people because that would be bad for Nebraskan families. What we have to do is deliver tax relief by controlling spending. Fundamentally, the opportunities for tax relief is the difference between spending restraint and revenue growth. And that's the way we have structured our tax relief packages. Yeah, Tyson.
Talking about the Agriculture Valuation Fairness Act, if I'm correct, this, if passed, doesn't get implemented until 2019. What are we telling those involved with the agriculture industry here in the next 2 years?
So with regard to property taxes and agriculture, we have maintained our commitment in this budget to property tax relief. So in this budget are $440 million of direct property tax relief through the Property Tax Credit Relief Fund. That includes what we did in my first year when we increased that Property Tax Credit Relief Fund by 45%, plus LB 958, which puts an additional $20 million a year into that Property Tax Credit Relief Fund directed specifically at agricultural land. By implementing the Agricultural Valuation Fairness Act in 2019, what we do is give those local taxing entities and our county assessors the opportunity to really understand the system and see how it will impact them. Remember, this is a structural major change in how we value agri, going from a market-based system to an income potential-based system. We want to make sure everybody has plenty of time to really adjust to what that is going to look like and has time to prepare. So that's why we're implementing that in 2019. It will also mean that we will have to put more money in the budget for the school aid fund. So we have to be able to budget for that as well, and we do that in my budget. In fact, so that $20 million that we'll have to put into the school aid formula will actually show up in the 2021 school year. And we budgeted for that in the status that goes out into those out years. Yes, Mark.
Governor, we've talked a lot about property tax, and you know that property taxes have gone up 167%-ish. So on our property that we farm, In the last numerous years, we've gone up about $40 an acre. And if I understand your proposal versus the income approach, in 2017, $2.2 billion, back of the envelope figuring is 28 to $30 million, which is about a 2% reduction. So on our property that we farm, we've gone up almost $40 an acre. That'd be about $1.20 an acre reduction. Appreciated. Won't really affect our bottom line substantially. Any other thoughts on long-term property tax reform?
Well, again, this is long-term property tax relief because we're changing structurally the way that we're doing ag land valuations. And of course, it'll be different across the state. So for example, if you're in Hall County, if this were in place right now, it'd be about a 1% decrease in ag land valuations. I was just in Norfolk, it'd be about a 4% decrease there. So it will affect different parts of the state in different ways. And really, that's why we have to think, when we think about tax relief, we really have to think long-term. We didn't get into the situation overnight, either with property taxes or income taxes. And we're not going to be able to change that around overnight either. So we have to think, how are we going to change structurally the way we're doing property taxes? How do we get here in the first place to be able to do that? And so that's why we propose changing this. Now, there's going to be other ideas on property tax relief as well. Certainly, we're willing to take a look at those ideas, and we're still making the commitment to the Property Tax Credit Relief Fund to the tune of $440 million in this next biennium. That is direct property tax relief from the state to all property owners in the state. Yeah.
I know Amazon just announced they're going to start collecting sales tax. What are your thoughts on getting other online retailers to collect and pay sales tax to the state of Nebraska?
Yeah, Amazon is being a good corporate citizen with regard to remitting those sales taxes. And just so everybody knows, you're all responsible for those. If you didn't notice on your income tax form, there's a little box at the bottom there. It says that if you got any sales and use tax, you can put that in right there. The state sales tax is 5.5%. So you just do that quick calculation. You can also do it monthly or quarterly. But we are all responsible for it, and Amazon is actually helping us by collecting that and remitting it to us. In fact, we are using that as part of how we're making those budget adjustments for this fiscal year, which ends June 30. We're putting about $11.2 million into the budget from Amazon, collecting these internet sales tax. So we certainly encourage other businesses who are doing the same that they can be a good corporate citizen by doing it as well. To do it to make it standard, you'd actually have to do it at the federal level to change it. States have tried to pass individual state laws, but it turns out that violates the Commerce Clause of the Constitution. So states can't do it individually, it would have to be addressed at the national level.
I thought there were some states that were actually doing it.
And they've been taken to court and they've lost. So the states are still trying to do it, but they're still going to end up in court. I think South Dakota is pursuing it right now, but they're going to end up in court too. Yeah, Pam.
I just want to thank you so very much for addressing the workforce development issue regarding certifications and qualifications for various parts of the industry, because our last meeting of workforce development for the Greater 88, there was a lot of discussion about the fact that many farm wives, for instance, will be looking for a way to supplement their income, and these are many of the industries that they'll be looking towards. So it all works together, and I appreciate your recognizing that.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Pam. And again, what we're trying to do is reduce those obstacles for people either starting their own businesses, changing careers, adding on to their income, being upwardly mobile. There was an Institute of Justice study in 2012 that really looked at the occupations that require licenses, and it showed that those disproportionately impact low-income professions. In fact, of the 102 professions that they studied, Nebraska had a license requirement for 45 of those. So again, we think that we have the opportunity here to be able to free up the economy, make it easier for people to get into those careers by making our requirements in line with what other states are doing, or in the case where we don't need it all, just getting rid of them entirely. So thank you. Yeah, Jake.
Well, being by Ken Goodall, first, thanks for being in Grand Island. Because there's many times, or sometimes, where governors have not been here, so we appreciate you coming around the state. But let me go back to your income potential. I know if ag producers say, okay, what's in the details? Is that income potential based on actual or hopeful, or you've done some...
Hopeful income?
I'm just asking.
So, I didn't want to get into too much of the details. but I will just kind of share at a high level how it's going to work. So the way we propose is we would look at a 10-year average of yields times recent commodity prices to kind of get the gross overall income. And again, we're going to be looking at this not at an individual level, but on a county or region level. And then we take an expense factor and then use the market-based sales to come up with a capitalization rate, or essentially kind of what's your expected rate of return. So if you think about it, if your income doesn't go up, if the same amount of income off a piece of land stays the same, but the market price goes up, the capitalization rate or your expected return comes down. And that's how you moderate those property value prices, so you don't see the big increases in property values, because you're making that return potential as part of the overall formula on how that land's going to be valued. You get back to what's the return on the actual land.
So is there still an incentive to produce?
Oh, absolutely. Because what we're going to be doing, again, this will be a general number, not an individual number. So it's a general number for a specific part of the state. Again, if you want to get into more details, we're going to have 8 different types of soils. It's going to be based on dry land, irrigated, or grassland. It's going to be by, part of the state you're in. So it'll all be, again, and frankly, the county assessors are the ones who are going to administer it. So it will all be very localized, but based on general data from the USDA and so forth. So it's not about a specific person's income. It's about the general income potential of the types of soil and land that farmland is on.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dave, Mark.
Mr. Ricketts, I have a question. First, I'd like to thank you and the legislature for taking the steps to move the VA from Health and Human Services over to the VA. What I want to understand about that is currently Health and Human Services obviously is a state entity, and the VA has both a federal entity and then the state of Nebraska VA, which is also state. Right. Now, there's two things. One, when we take from Health and Human Services and shift it over to the state, that money we're going to save, if we're moving it to the state, is it just transferring it from one area to another? So I'm wondering where the savings come from. And I'm also curious, for example, here in Grand Island we have a federal facility, which is a hospital, and then we have the state Health and Human Services, which is our home. And the staff that works at the home is under the state, and the staff, obviously, at the hospital is under the federal. And the exact same position, say a nurse at the home, for the exact same work over at the federal, gets paid quite a bit more than the exact same work at the home. So the question is, one, where's the savings going to be? Is it going to be more federal grants? Right. Is that how the savings is going to come from?
Right. So when we move veterans' homes underneath the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs, again, the same person has been managing both areas, John Hilgert. And so what we're going to do is really what we hope to do is be able to make this more about customer service, about the fact there's only going to be one agency the veterans have to go to instead of 2. There's going to be one team now, streamlined operations. That's really where we expect to see the benefit is in how we can do a better job of taking care of our veterans. But as you pointed out, there will be a modest benefit to the budget because we will be able to leverage federal dollars to be able to administer the veterans' homes that we were not able to do in the past because it was in the Department of Health and Human Services. So because it's going to be in Veterans Affairs, we will see a positive benefit of about $1.4 million that we will be able to leverage federal funds to do instead of using state funds. So there is a modest benefit there for us, but it's really the reason we're doing it is for customer service reasons, to be able to do a better job for our veterans.
And I appreciate it.
So that's really the motivation behind it. Yeah.
Well, hi. I'm Maria Arriaga from Telemundo, and I have a question a little bit separate of this. I do want to know, what is your general position on voter ID cards in Nebraska?
So I think one of the things that's important is to make sure that we believe and trust that we've got a voter system that works, that we've got integrity. And what other states have done is passed voter ID laws to help ensure that we've got that integrity in our voter system. So I support such things. Now, what you have to do is make sure that whatever it involves, that you don't make it an obstacle for someone to vote. So if you were going to pass something like that, you somehow got to ensure that people who maybe don't have an ID now can obtain one from the state without a cost to them. So that's part of what any legislation will have to be. And I know that there's somebody talking about doing a voter ID law. I've not looked at specific legislation. So while in principle I'm in favor of it, when it comes to specific legislation, the legislature really needs the opportunity to kind of work through their process before I comment on that more specifically.
Governor, any thoughts on the TIOSA formula? There's been some talk of dealing with the non-equalized district, maybe giving every district some form of aid. Any thoughts along those directions?
Well, again, in principle, I think if we can look for ways to reform the TIOSA formula and make it more fair across the state, that's a good thing. The devil's always in the detail, and so this is where I generally let the legislature work through their processes first, come up with specific bills that have a chance to go through the legislative process, because as you know, oftentimes whatever gets proposed is very different by the time it comes out. And you know, that was true of the bills that I worked on last year with the legislature, LB 958, 959. In fact, 958 was so different, we had to have a new hearing on it. So the legislature really needs the opportunity as a separate branch of government to go through their process with regard to all these bills.
Okay, when you're talking about the core guidelines in your budget recommendations for the upcoming biennium, you mentioned reducing government expenditures. Can you go into maybe any specifics? Is there any ones that stand out within those reductions?
Well, again, we treated every agency differently from the standpoint of we started this process back in June. We sit down with them, and we knew that the revenue was going to be tight, so we asked them all to look at 8% modifications, or what would they do if they had to cut 8% out of their budget. And so we sat down, talked to them about their priorities, and how would we address things. So, for example, this is why we're really funding corrections at their full request, because we know we want to continue the reforms that are going on there to protect the public safety. We prioritized education spending, but we are taking reductions in other areas. So, for example, we're taking reductions in places like health and human services in areas where we think we can manage them. We're expecting to get savings, for example, by implementing Heritage Health, the managed care system for Medicaid. Now, there's other things that we said, you know what, they're good programs, but in a tight budget time, we've got to make difficult choices, so we're going to cut these programs. So, for example, one program that the state has is Stormwater grant program. And that's a program where we've done a lot with regard to local municipalities. For example, through our federal swap program, I think Grand Island is swapping about $900,000 of their federal dollar to the state, and that benefits probably about 90% with our increased match rate from 80% to 90%. So we're looking, with the things we've done with regard to that, we've said, you know what, these grant programs, we're going to go ahead and end those. Another one would be the riparian vegetation aid. This is something that we use to remove vegetation from places like the Republican River Valley, so that it helps us with our water commitments to Kansas. We think that's a good program, but we were going to cut it back about half because we've got other budget priorities. So we looked in the budget for places like that where we said, what's our priority? What are the things we can do? How does it play against other things that are going on in the budget to make those decisions? Take a couple more questions. Drew, what do you got?
How is the budget going to affect my school?
How is the budget going to affect your school? Well, specifically, Grand Island actually gets about, I think the funding for Grand Island is going up significantly from the state, in state aid, because you're adding on more students in your school. And what I'm doing in my budget is prioritizing that school aid formula. So where the rest of the state budget is growing about 1.7%, I'm actually proposing that school aid formula grow at 2.7%, which is almost 60% more than the rest of the state budget is growing. So we're prioritizing education as a part of our overall budget package. One question, yeah.
Recently, with Health and Human Services, they've required that people with disabilities are on, they have to choose between three insurance companies. I'd like to know why you think that's going to save a whole lot of money, and in other states that tried it, it hasn't turned out so successful. So why are we doing it?
So what you're talking about is, again, in our Medicaid program, we're going to managed care. And we put out an RFP there to to a number of companies, but 3 of the companies who won that bid to come in and help manage our Medicaid program. And so the idea is, by focusing on things like wellness and prevention, we can actually reduce the overall cost in that program by helping people get healthier sooner. And so that's part of the choices there. Now, certainly, execution does matter. You're absolutely right. But one of the advantages we've got is by looking at what other states have done and trying to learn from what they've done so we can do a better job here in the state. And that's why we expect to be able to do a better job of executing on those programs and being able to save money in the long run by doing so.
As compared to other states, how do you see them?
Well, you know, if you want to get into the details of how to do that, what I do is ask you to talk to Taylor Gage over here. We get you connected with Calder Lynch, who runs our Medicaid division, because he's more familiar with the details about how those contracts work and how he actually expects to get those savings. One last question.
Recently there's been a lot of talk about immigration and refugees, and I've heard up to as many as 500 are going to come to Nebraska. Federally, you got to pay for that, is it in the budget? How's that work?
Right, so Nebraska has taken more than our share of refugees lately, but we've always been a welcoming state, whether it's been the Vietnamese or the Sudanese. Where I do have concern is when refugees are coming to our state from war-torn areas where we don't have the ability to really verify who they are. At least FBI Director Comey has said that he doesn't have databases with information. And so we've asked the federal administration for more information about who's actually coming to our state. And so far, the Obama administration has refused to help us. They've given us a little bit of information after the fact, but they're not being very specific about it. Now, what happens is the relationship is between the federal government and the nonprofit organizations that actually place these refugees. And the refugees do receive federal aid, and we administer it through our Medicaid program to a certain extent, but it doesn't require anything in our budget to increase because of it. Now, what I am hoping is with the Trump administration, they will review the refugee status more thoroughly and really give us some comfort that if they're going to allow people to come from war-torn areas, that we actually know who those people are and have good systems in place to vet them so that we don't allow, say, for example, terrorists to come in like it has happened in Europe. So we really want to continue to be a welcoming state, but we've got to make security of our own people the priority here. And that's what I expect this Trump administration to do, and to work with states like Nebraska to be able to assure us more about who's coming into our state so we can feel comfortable that we're not putting our citizens at risk.
Once they come here, who decides where they go?
So the nonprofit agencies work directly with the federal government to place those people. The state actually has no role. That's been part of our beef, is that since we don't have a role, we don't know who's coming here or where they're going, and that's been part of our issue with the federal government that, frankly, the Obama administration hasn't been willing to work with us on. They really kept the states at arm's length. Well, again, folks, thank you very much for coming out here this afternoon. Very much appreciate you all taking the time to come out and talk about the important issues we face here in the state. We have some challenges in our budget, but just like all Nebraska families, we're going to tighten our belts, we're going to make spending decisions, and we're going to be able to deliver essential services, prioritize our spending, balance the budget, and do it without raising taxes. I'm excited about the opportunities we have in front of us to be able to continue to work for you and do a better job delivering our services. Frankly, the sky is the limit with regard to our opportunities here in Nebraska. We live in the best place in the world. So I'm excited to continue to work for you. Thank you very much for coming out here this afternoon. Hope you all have a happy new year.